hosted by George Anderson. George is fitness, health and lifestyle coach and the writer and presenter. He also regularly presents a slot on Radio Oxford, BBC Radio Oxford. So George gave up drinking about a year and 3 months ago, which is how we got in touch. He read Jason Vale's book, How to Kick the Drink Easily, and was an instant convert. And when he was blogging about it, came across Soberistas and got in touch with me. So that's how we made a connection. So George is going to be talking about eliminating toxins from your diet and the positive effects they can have on your mental health as well as your physical state. He'll be talking for about half an hour to 40 minutes, and there'll be the opportunity to ask questions at the end, but feel free to write your questions during George's presentation and he'll select as many as he can at the end to answer. So we're going to hand you over to George now, and hope you enjoy our webinar. Thank you.
Right, okay. Thanks for the introduction. I feel like it's been built up as this huge presentation with PowerPoint. I know you had someone on about a month ago who did exactly that, and there was a big all singing, all dancing presentation. So this is just going to be me talking, and just want to check that I'm on. I can't actually see me at the moment, so I'm going to assume that I'm on, and hopefully the tech at the other side of the connection is going to get that sorted out if there's a problem. But no,
you are on, George. We can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me. Oh, that's good. I just wanted to talk to you this evening about what's widely regarded as clean eating. So, as Lucy alluded to there, it's about eliminating toxins from your body and some of the benefits. So, I want to start off by saying why this is important, or why you should be interested. And actually, if you're here listening or watching this webinar, certainly if you're watching it live, then you've obviously already demonstrated some level of interest in what I'm hopefully going to be sharing with you tonight, especially given that the proximity to back to school time, and the fact that the X Factor started just a moment ago as well. Sorry, if you didn't know that, then stay tuned here. This is going to be much more exciting than the X Factor. But clean eating is something that can have so many benefits. I'm going to go through exactly what it is shortly and how to do it and all those things. But the benefits of where you want to hook into, because most people go down the line of, right, I want to go on a diet, or I want to change the way I eat because they want to lose weight, and that might be your major motivation as well. But many people who start to make changes to their diet and eat this way, in the clean nutrition way, find that there are many other benefits way beyond the scope of just what the number on the scales tell you in the morning, or how well your clothes fit. That's obviously a big part of it, and that's one of the big drivers. And if you're here because that's what you want to find out more about, losing weight, toning up, getting fit, whatever, that's what I do. But these other benefits I kind of came across by accident, just because people kept telling me how much better they felt when they eliminated the foods that we're going to talk about eliminating, and they started eating more of the foods that we're going to talk about eating more of. So some of the benefits that they experience were things like just feeling more energized, not having that sluggish downtime in the afternoon, waking up in the mornings and feeling ready for the day rather than just wishing it was bedtime again so you can go and get another couple of hours of sleep. And actually, when you stop drinking, you probably experienced an element of this anyway, because one of the major factors here is toxins and the amount of toxins that are stored in your body. And alcohol, obviously, is a pretty toxic substance to be putting in. So as soon as you stop putting that in, if it's happening regularly, and then you stop, then that's going to have a profound effect on how you feel. You can have the same effect, if not more, by making changes to your diet. And that's in my mind, that's the biggest motivation to making positive changes to your diet, to your nutrition. I'm an athlete. I'm a runner. I'm one of those annoying people who doesn't put on weight. See me no matter how much I've actually tried to put on weight in the past, and it hasn't happened. I just had to eat like it's my job, and it's still a real kind of struggle to put it on. But the reason that I eat the way I eat, which is largely as clean as possible, is because I like to feel good. I like to feel energized. I like to feel like I've got this clarity of thought. I like to feel motivated. I like to feel like I'm productive when I sit down to work. And all those things are very closely related to how I eat. And I know this because the moment I step outside of the remit of clean eating, and I have a bit of a fall off the wagon, even if it's just for a couple of meals, then it's incredible the difference it makes to how I feel. That's not to say that I'm 100% all the time. I just know, and I take it into consideration when I'm making food choices, that is going to be something I have to weigh up there. It's not going to be about weight for me. It's going to be about how I feel. And if I'm ready and happy to make that compromise, then I go ahead and eat whatever I want to eat. And pretty much been for a week in Devon, and there was a lot of ice cream consumed there, I can tell you. I've got 3 children, and it was a daily occurrence, let me tell you that. Anyway, let's some of the other benefits as well that are kind of almost by the by, really. You find that when you start eliminating these toxins from your diet, you find that your nails start to grow stronger, your skin feels softer and has more of a luster and a shine. Your hair, women in particular, always tell me how good their hair feels, like body of the hair. I've got my hair's about an inch long. I have no idea what body in the hair looks or feels like, but apparently it really, really improves when you start eliminating toxins from your diet. So there's lots and lots of other benefits aside from losing weight. That said, if weight loss is one of your goals, this is possibly, for many people, going to be the fastest way to making that happen effectively and long term. Not just as a, right, let's go on a diet, lose 10 pounds, and then go back to eating how I was once the wedding / birthday / celebration is over. This is about making long-term habitual changes to your life. So let's get right into it and talk about, first of all, rather than what to eliminate, let's talk about what you can eat more of, because I think that's a bit more optimistic and slightly less depressing than saying, right, you can never have this again, you should never eat that. So let's talk about some of the foods that you should be eating more of. And I use the word should loosely as well, folks, by the way, because it's quite an interesting word. When you're told that you should do something or you should not do something, then you're much more likely eventually to go against that and to, well, when was the last time you were told you should do something and how did it make you feel? You probably felt pretty, after you've done it for a little while, maybe you can use brute force and willpower to get through it for the first bit, but eventually your inner voice starts saying, you know what, I'm not going to do that. No one's going to tell me what I should do. I'm an adult. I'm just going to do whatever I want. So I'll use the word should a little bit carefully, but what you could do is you could start eating more of these healthy foods. And some of them might be obvious ones and some of them might be surprising. The first thing that you should be trying to eat as much as possible is veg. And that probably comes as no surprise that I'm going to start saying you should be eating more veggies. Now, some people are lucky enough that they enjoy eating veg, but others aren't in quite the same boat. I would definitely recommend, if you're only going to have a few portions of veg a day, to go for leafy green veg wherever possible. Things like spinach and broccoli and curly kale. Leaves, green leaves in particular, are packed with antioxidants. They're packed with nutrients, and they're really going to be your best bet if that's all you're going to be eating in the way of vegetables. Then go for the rainbow of colors as well, so you're getting all the different colored veggies, peppers, and so on as well. And then we come down to fruit. And I'm going to talk about sugar in a little bit later on, but fruit is definitely on the menu. You definitely can eat it. There's a lot of talk going on about how you shouldn't eat fruit or you shouldn't eat too much fruit. And sure, you probably don't want to be sitting down eating a whole punnet of grapes, but you definitely don't want to feel like you should be avoiding eating fruit. So that's the first bit. It's pretty straightforward. Eat more fruit and eat more veg. You also want to be eating plenty of healthy fats. The two things I try to make sure I always get in my day: veggies and healthy fats. I'm a massive fan of coconut oil, which is a funny one, and some of you may have tried coconut oil before. Some of you might be a new thing, but you can get it normally in specialist supermarkets. Some mainstream supermarkets will sell it. Certainly health food stores will sell it. Go for the pure version coconut oil. It's absolutely ram-packed with goodness. Don't be put off by the fact that it's over 50% saturated fat. That's not a problem, because it's the kind of saturated fats called the monounsaturated, long-chain triglycerides. They're the ones that are going to help your body. They can help you release energy. And actually, if you're feeling a little bit sluggish in the afternoon, a little teaspoon coconut oil. If you like the coconut taste, then that's a great way of giving yourself a bit of a kick in the afternoon. Works for me anyway. So coconut oil, you can cook with coconut oil. It's got many benefits over olive oil when you're cooking because it has a much higher burn point, which means it's going to keep its integrity, it's going to keep its health benefits whilst you're cooking, rather than olive oil, which starts to change its structure and can become hydrogenated trans fats, which are definitely oils to avoid. The other oils and fats to try and get in the obvious ones, so that's going to be your oily fish, things like avocados, nuts, seeds. All of these fats are super healthy for you. And the other thing you'll notice is they're all really natural. You know, you're not going to get an oily fish pie, or you're not going to get an avocado biscuit. These are foods that you eat in a whole, so you can make things with them. But you certainly don't want to, don't shy away from eating fats, especially not if you're, well, saturated fat has got a bit of it's had a bit of a bad rap over the years, but it's not necessarily the reason for all sorts of things like heart disease, arteriosclerosis. It's not the reason for weight gain. We're going to come on to that shortly. So don't shy away from fats or saturated fats, but make sure the ones you are getting are the healthy ones. We should also be trying to drink more water. I'm going to come back to hydration shortly and drink, and not in particular alcohol. Fortunately, on this presentation, I don't have to talk about alcohol too much, but I'm going to talk about some of the reasons why alcohol is something to take on in the context of tonight. But water really does. It helps with hydration for your skin. It helps with hydration for every cell in your body, making every cell in your body function the way it's supposed to function. So make sure you're getting enough water in. I'm sat here with a nice big tankard of water, and I generally try to go nowhere without taking some water with me. So if you're going out, you're out and about, then make sure you have some water with you. Just get into the habit of drinking it regularly. So other foods to try and eat more of, and your meat, fish, none of that's off limits. You want to be eating the best quality that you can. There's a big debate about organic versus regular, and then locally produced versus organic that's been imported from thousands of miles away. So it's a bit of a debate there. I'm not going to go too much into the organic debate here, but you certainly want to get as high quality as you can for whatever budget you happen to be on. But meat and fish are all absolutely fine to add in there. Spices and herbs, these are all good foods as well. And actually, as soon as you start thinking, well, actually, I can use spices, I can use herbs, then what that means is that all of a sudden, the recipes you're able to create, you've got all those flavors, all those tastes in there, and you start wanting to eat this food because it tastes so damn good. And not only that, it doesn't leave you feeling rubbish afterwards. And you've probably had a hangover at some point, an alcohol-induced hangover. You've probably also had a food-induced hangover. The food hangover is awful because you just feel really sluggish the next day. And you normally only notice it when you've been eating clean for a little while, and then you have a horrible takeaway meal or whatever the night before you wake up in the morning, and you just feel awful, absolutely, just no get up and go, fuzzy head, and it is just like having a regular hangover. Maybe not quite so bad as an all singing, all dancing, head thumping, someone's moved into my mouth and overnight type hangover, but it's still pretty bad. And for me, it's another reason why I go out of my way to eat as cleanly as possible most of the time. So plenty of foods that you can eat, and certainly eating clean, eating healthy, reducing a toxic load does not have to be boring. I think really I was going a bit around the houses there. That's one of the points I wanted to get through. Eating clean and being healthy isn't boring. You do need a bit of, you might need to do a bit of searching around. Plenty of cookbooks out there that they may not be completely healthy, but there are always plenty of recipes you can amend and adapt once you know the principles, which I'm going to go through in just a moment. If weight loss is one of your goals, then you certainly want to be looking at reducing the overall portion sizes for what you're eating. There's only so much coconut oil and so many avocados and so many nuts that your body's going to need. So even if something's healthy, you still want to limit how much you're eating. It's probably not quite the same case with vegetables. You're probably safe with eating as much of the green leafy veggies as possible. you're probably going to get sick of the taste of them before your body says enough's enough, I'm going to start storing fat here. But with most foods, weight loss, you just got to go by portion size and slowly start reducing your portions. You don't want to be hungry, but most of the people I speak to about who make changes like this, when you increase the amount of healthy fats in particular that you're eating, and proteins from meats and fish and so on, then you're much more likely, or much less likely rather, to feel hungry. So your body's got the energy that it needs, and it's not craving for nutrients, which makes you feel hungry. So let's go through the foods which I recommend you avoid. Now, I should mention this at the beginning. There is a Q&A at the end, and I know that Lucy mentioned that in the introduction. Rather than waiting until the end to ask questions, ask as you go along, because it's going to be, whilst it's fresh in your mind, you think about it, that's going to be the time to ask the questions. Write it down, then I'll get to that question when I've finished the presentation. That's definitely going to be the way to go. Give you a bit of time at the end to ask questions if you haven't done so, but make sure you do. This is the benefits of turning up live to one of these things, these webinars. I would also recommend making a few notes. The recording will be available afterwards, but you're much more likely to briefly read through your notes than to go through the whole webinar once again. So let's go through some of the foods that I recommend you avoid, and right at the top of the list is, surprise, surprise, sugar. And you've probably heard quite a lot about the evils of sugar. This year, in 2014, there's been absolutely stacks of TV documentaries and newspaper articles and magazine articles all berating sugar and starting to villainize sugar as the real issue when it comes to the fat obesity problems that we are experiencing in the UK and beyond. So why is sugar such a problem, and how has it become such a problem? In other words, why have we been cajoled into believing that sugar's fine and it's actually fat's the enemy? And it goes back to probably the 1960s, 1970s, where there was a big, there's lots of conspiracy theories about, there's lots of government and lots of politics, and there's lots of big commerce getting involved there and lots of money exchanging hands, and eventually that we just became, that's just what we believed, that the sugar's fine, it's perfectly healthy, it's low fat, and fat was the enemy. We have to eat loads of low fat diets. Well, fortunately now the truth is coming out, and people are becoming, I'm sure you are, becoming a lot more aware of the reality of the situation, that actually sugar is the major problem, and eliminating sugar from your diet is probably the best thing you could ever do. It doesn't mean you can never ever have an ice cream again. It doesn't mean you can never ever have a slice of birthday cake again. But when you're eating sugar habitually, then there's bound to be problems. What happens when you eat sugar is well, actually for any refined carbohydrate, this happens the same. Like white bread, for example, you're still going to convert that into sugars very, very quickly, almost as quickly as table sugar. Once sugar enters your bloodstream, or into your digestive system, it gets into the bloodstream very, very quickly. And what that does is it ramps up your blood sugar levels. So your body then has to think, oh, hang on, this is getting dangerous now. I need to drop those blood sugar levels down. Let's release a load of insulin, which is one of the hormones that regulates your blood sugar levels. Well, that drops straight back down again. But of course, you can't just wee out the glucose. It's in your bloodstream. It's got to go somewhere. So where's it going to go? There's only 3 places that it can go. One of them is your liver, which is the major glycogen source for your brain. So you need that. It's only a small amount that's going to be stored in your liver. It can be stored in your muscles. And if you've just been doing a really hard training session, then you may well have a predisposition to storing that blood sugar in your liver, which is, sorry, in your muscles, which is fine. But normally that isn't the case. You haven't just done a workout when you eat that donut or you eat that piece of cake. So the only other place it can go is your fat stores. So insulin is one of the body's prime fat storage hormones. It's a problem. So eating lots of sugar is essentially encouraging your body to lay down body fat. Now that doesn't happen when you eat fat, by the way. When you eat fat in your diet, you don't just suddenly lay that down as fat. Saturated fat in your diet doesn't straight away go through your system and adhere itself to the inside of your arteries, causing blockages and arteriosclerosis. That's not how it works. Eating sugar makes you fat, and there's no 2 ways about it. It also makes you feel pretty rubbish, because once the insulin's gone to work and it's dropped your blood sugar levels right down, you suddenly start feeling pretty rubbish. You know, your energy levels go, and I can normally guarantee that this will happen. I'll have an ice cream, or I'll have a meal and a pudding or something like that, and then within an hour, if I'm sat down, within an hour, I'll be falling asleep. I guarantee it. If I'm walking around, I'm doing stuff that's not quite so bad, I'll just feel a bit sluggish and a bit lethargic, but if I'm sat down, that's it, game over. And you probably felt something similar to that as well, and it's normally very quickly as it happens, because your blood sugar levels drop straight back down, and of course what happens then? You start thinking, oh, let's get something to eat, I'm really hungry, or I must get something to get my energy levels up, I feel really tired now. You have lunch and you start feeling that dip about an hour and a half later. You start thinking, I must have something to snack on in the afternoon. If you avoid those blood sugar level crashes, then you don't feel that way. You don't get those highs and lows of how you're feeling. Here's the real kicker, though. I don't know if your life's at all stressful. Perhaps you have things going on in your life, or you have had in the past, where you feel there's a certain level of stress that you're having to deal with on a daily basis. Well, stress is, or the stress hormone that's released when you feel under pressure, when you feel stressed. There's two. One's called adrenaline and one's called cortisol. Cortisol, they're both natural hormones, and they're both absolutely essential because they give you the fight or flight response. But if you're just sitting down at your desk, if you're just going about your daily business and you're not going to fight an angry bear or run away from something, then you're not going to use that cortisol. And so it's monkeying around in your body here, causing all kinds of havoc. And one of the things that it does is it predisposes, it sensitizes your belly fat cells for storing glycogen, or for sucking out the glucose from your blood and storing it there. It says, this is the place to go. Come here, fill me up first. That's one of the reasons why they're kind of the stereotypical image of a stressed out city worker is a guy with a big pot belly. And that's often the reason why, because the stress encourages fat to be stored around the belly fat in particular. They have a special chemical on the lining of the cell, on the fat cell, and that's what cortisol triggers to say, come in here, this is the place to be. Now I'll come on to toxins in a second and talk a bit more about that, but one of the things that your fat cells, one of the other things that your fat cells are responsible for are for locking in toxins from the body. So when you eat food, and if there's toxins in, then sugar causes a toxic environment. So that's one thing, but processed foods and some of the other things we're going to talk about eliminating in a moment. If you eat those foods, then you have toxins in your body, and that's fine. We can deal with that. The liver can deal with a certain amount of that, and it does a great job. But what it can't deal with is an excess of that amount of toxins. When you get an excess, the other toxins that it can't deal with are stored, and they're stored in the fat cells. Now, whilst there's a toxic environment in your body, those fat cells can't release. They can't release the toxins. They can't release the fat, because to do so would increase your body's toxic levels to a point that was dangerous. So instead of releasing it, they stay locked away. So as long as the toxin's coming in, those fat cells ain't going to give up their cargo of fat, and they ain't going to give up their cargo of toxins. It's one of the reasons why low-calorie diets will work to an extent, but they're never going to work to get rid of the last little bit of body fat, the last little bit that you really want to get rid of, especially around the belly. So, because a lot of low-calorie diets, especially ones, well, I can name you names. A lot of low-calorie diets will still encourage you to eat lots of processed food, lots of sugar, because you don't have to eat much. Then you can keep the calories down, because fat's much more calorific. It's 9 calories per gram of fat. There's only 4 in a gram of carbohydrate. So you can eat much more carbohydrate than you can fat on a low-calorie diet, but you're not doing anything about the toxins. So there we go. There's a little bit about insulin and a bit about cortisol. Let's talk about the next. Well, I've already mentioned it. Let's talk about processed foods next. And actually, if you eliminate sugar and you eliminate processed foods, then you're already on a pretty good track there. The processed foods are anything that have had more than a couple of stages of human interaction with. So pies, crisps, most cheeses as well. Anything where there's been some sort of, like I said, some sort of human monkeying around with, some sort of meddling there. Because what happens then is your body isn't designed to deal with that. Your body isn't designed to break that down. It's not designed to, it can do it, but it's not designed to do it. So what happens is you're giving your liver this overload, giving the liver this extra work for it to try and deal with. And one of the things I haven't mentioned is the other major task of the liver, which is to help metabolize fat. So it's got these two things. One of them, it wants to process toxins, and one of them over here, it wants to metabolize fat. It can't do them both very, very well. It has to prioritize one. Metabolizing fat, it's not really a priority for the liver. Leave it. Fat cells will store it. They'll be there. They're not really doing any harm. So what happens is it goes to the priority, which is to get rid of the toxins from your body. And whilst it's doing this, it ain't doing that. So when you're putting toxins into your body, again, one of the reasons why alcohol is such a bad thing for losing weight, because it's massive toxic overload. Whilst that's happening for literally, depending on how much you drink, days afterwards, your liver is not going to be metabolizing and processing fat. So if no matter what you do with your diet, the liver's overworked, it ain't going to be getting rid of the fat that you're stored in your body. So processed foods are definitely things to avoid. And the way to tell processed foods, look at the ingredients. And if there's anything on there that you don't recognize, then it's probably a processed food. If there's anything on there that's got that looks like a chemical name, it's a processed food. Put it back on the shelf, step away from the aisle, move along to the fresh food aisle, because that's where you're going to get a little bit more satisfaction when it comes to healthy food. Let's move on to the next thing, which I highly recommend you experiment with eliminating, and that's whole wheat, or not whole wheat, just wheat. I say whole wheat because I saw someone asking a question about whole wheat a moment ago. I'm going to come on to that in a second. But the problem with wheat is, well, twofold. First of all, it's packed with gluten. And whether you're celiac, which is the disease that says your body can't actually deal with gluten and it's a physical disorder, whether you're celiac or not, it doesn't matter, because yes, your body might be able to handle gluten, but it's going to overload it and it's going to give it a hard time. And as we just discovered there, we don't want to give our liver a hard time. We want to allow things to just happen naturally, and we don't want to slow anything down. We want to just get focused on getting rid of the fat and storing and burning through fat rather than having to deal with toxins. So when it comes to wheat, the major issue is, and certainly I was really guilty of this. I was in my loft last year, and I came across an old food diary from probably the third or fourth year of me being in the fitness industry, which I've been doing this about 12 years now. And I was flicking through it, as you do, and it made some pretty interesting reading. And I'd start most of my days with half a dozen Weetabix and skim milk, of course, because that's healthier, low fat. So I was half a dozen Weetabix, then I'd have 4 rounds of toast. And then mid-morning I'd have 4 more rounds of toast with peanut butter. And then at lunchtime I'd have a sandwich, 4 pieces of bread with chicken or tuna or whatever inside. So far I'm up to about a half a loaf of bread in one day. This is going to have flapjacks, and then in the evening I'd have big bowls of pasta or rice or potatoes, loads of protein. I'd have my veg. I was doing all the good stuff there. But I look back at it, and it was just wheat after wheat after wheat. Weetabix, bread, pasta. I remember the day that I stopped eating wheat. I think it was because my sister was doing it, and she's a bit of a health nut as well. And she just said that she'd given up eating wheat and felt so much better. And it was about a year after she decided that I'm going to try this as well. And I just literally stopped. For one day, I stopped. The next morning, I woke up, and all of a sudden, it was like I had a new body. I had like a new digestive system. It was literally that quick. One day. And what I realized is every single morning when I'd been waking up, prior to that point, I had it's like gut rot, this real tight, bloated feeling in my stomach every single morning. And I just accepted it. I just thought, well, that's obviously what it's like. Fine, it's not that bad. It's a bit of a, it's not exactly comfortable, but it's not going to affect my life too much. But then when I stopped, and all of a sudden that wasn't there anymore, I realized how much better I could feel, and it was just down to the wheat. And now, whenever I eat wheat, which I do occasionally, I can guarantee that the next morning, that's how I'll feel. And true to that, every single time I eat wheat, that's what happens. So what I would recommend you do is experiment with this. Because if you're eating a lot of wheat at the moment, then you're probably not getting a lot of other good nutrients that you could be getting. Because when you eat wheat, you're not going to be, loading up on other forms of carbohydrate. I'm not saying carbs are bad. I would just recommend that you get your carbs from other sources. And even if you're going to go down the pasta route, there's plenty of really good gluten-free pastas that you can get these days as well. So definitely avoid wheat. If you can avoid gluten in completely, which is also in spelt, it's in barley, it's in rye, it's in a lot of oats as well, that you can get gluten-free oats if you look carefully in some health food stores. And if you are trying to lose weight, then I would definitely recommend just reducing the overall amount of starchy carbohydrate that you eat. Because starchy carbohydrates, even if they're not wheat-based, they will still end up releasing sugars into your bloodstream, and those sugars that are in your bloodstream will trigger the same effect with the insulin that will drop it down, and you've got cortisol, it's going to go to your belly, and on it goes again. So it's not just sugar that causes that reaction, that chain reaction. Starchy carbs are fine, and especially if you've just had a workout, that's the time to eat it. Post-workout, knock yourself out with the starchy carbs. Yeah, actually still take care with how much you eat, portion size, but that's definitely a better time to have it than mid-afternoon or at lunchtime when you haven't done anything. Let's talk about dairy, which is one of the other foods that I recommend you pay attention to how much you're eating or drinking, because actually, to be honest, really it's the milk that's the major problem here. If you're very sensitive to lactose, which is the sugar in milk, then you probably want to avoid yogurt and butter as well, and cheeses definitely. Cheese will come under the processed food heading there, but milk is probably not as healthy as we're led to believe, which is another bit of a problem there, because we've all been brought up thinking that milk is the healthiest thing on the planet, and the government tell us how much milk we should drink. We probably tell our kids how much milk they should drink, but unless you're drinking the raw milk, which is direct from the cow's udder, that hasn't been pasteurized, hasn't been homogenized, and I don't believe is legal in this country to buy from a supermarket. You can buy it from a farm, and I think you can buy it from a farm shop, but it's pretty hard to get a hold of. Once milk has been pasteurized and homogenized, it changes the structure entirely, and then all you're drinking, there's hardly any nutrients left in the milk. The calcium, that's almost all gone when you heat milk up, pasteurize it, drop the temperature back down again, calcium's gone, or most of it has anyway. So what you're left with is sugar water at best. And I remember somebody described it to me once as cow pus. I think that was what sealed it for me. That's what really put me off drinking and stuff. But I'd have that on cereal every morning, and that was fine. But again, since I stopped drinking milk, just feels so much better. And there's many better drinks that you can have. Almond milk, even rice milk is pretty good. You can make your own, or you can buy some decent decent ones off the supermarket shelf. Oat milk, another good one. And again, these are all very easy to make yourself if you're into that kind of thing. So if you're looking for a direct substitute, then you can get lots of dairy-free ones. I wouldn't recommend soy milk. A quick word on soy is I would probably say that you want to go out your way to avoid soy. It's incredibly commonly sprayed as in chemicals, and there's a lot of residual traces of chemicals from the sprays, from the farming. It's very bad for you. Soy itself, some experts will talk about the benefits of soy in terms of balancing out estrogen and progesterone levels, but there are many better ways of doing that. And certainly, if you're eating lots and lots of soy products, then what happens is you can actually increase the amount of estrogen that your body has well beyond what you want. Then estrogen-progesterone balance is something you can control through diet, especially if you're eating a lot of the cruciferous vegetables that can help increase your progesterone levels and regain that balance. Cruciferous vegetables are things like broccoli and cabbage and spring greens, kale. They're all cruciferous vegetables and really worthwhile packing into your diet as well, as I already mentioned about the green veggies earlier. So trying to avoid soy. Again, I wasn't going to talk too much about soy tonight, but it's normally a question that comes up, so I'll head that off and say try and avoid it. In my opinion, it's not worth. There's many better options, and I'd never trust something that could be a milk or it could be a meat substitute. If it can be either of those two things, then what is it? Come on, soy. What's it going to be? The only exception to that, I'd say, would be raw soybeans like edamame, which is just the natural product. And if you can get good quality edamame, then that's one way of eating soy. But again, there's no point in going out your way just to do that. Okay, the last thing that I want to talk about then with regards eliminating is caffeine, because, and this is the one that if you haven't just switched off, then listen in for this next little bit, because it's something that you want to experiment with. And I love my coffee. I grind my own beans. I've got one of those little stovetop things. I've got an AeroPress coffee maker. I've got a filter. I love good quality coffee. But if you're trying to get your hormones in check, then coffee, especially the homemade stuff, is going to increase your cortisol levels. And just for the sake of stopping drinking coffee for a few days to experiment with this and how much better you feel, it's got to be worth it. You don't want high cortisol levels. Remember, it can affect your sleep, it can affect your mood, it can affect your predisposition to laying down belly fat. So if you know that you're drinking something every day, and maybe 3 or 4 cups of it a day, that's causing that to happen, then why wouldn't you stop? And a lot of people find actually stopping drinking coffee is probably harder than stopping drinking alcohol, because it's like a more socially acceptable thing. You can have coffee during the day, you can have it in the morning. No one's going to say that person's drinking loads of coffee. Don't want to go and sit next to them. So it's harder to stop drinking coffee than it is perhaps to stop drinking alcohol. That said, it's definitely worth giving yourself maybe a week to say, I'm just going to not have any coffee for a week. You know, you can do it. You just do it for a week, and then after that, you can make a decision as to what you're going to do. But the difference it will make to you, how you feel, is incredible. I can almost guarantee now, if you drink a lot of coffee and you stop drinking coffee, you'll have a banging headache for maybe 3 days. Probably not selling this to you very well at the moment, but you'll probably have a headache. So just be ready for that. Hold strong. Stick with it, because when you come out the other side, you will feel amazing. And if you've ever stopped drinking coffee before for any period of time, you'll know exactly what I mean. So the other reason why coffee is a bit of an issue is because I drink my coffee and I'll have it black. I'll literally just have black coffee and a bit of hot water, and that's it. Most people I know don't do that. Most people will have loads of milk, they'll have frothy lattes, they'll have sugar or sweeteners or syrups or flavorings or cream on top. And that's where you start getting problems. Because then it's not the coffee that you want, it's the sugar and the cream that you want. And then you're going back to what we've already talked about, eliminating sugars, eliminating dairy. So depending on how you have your coffee as to whether or not it's going to still be a suitable thing to include in your diet if you're trying to make some positive changes. Okay, now, I want to talk, sorry, I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I've missed out there. There was one more thing. I mentioned about water earlier on, and I've got to say it is incredibly important that you do drink plenty of water. One of the questions I often get asked, and again, by the way, I'm going to come to questions in just a moment, so if you have any, I can see there's a fair few come up already, and if you have any other questions, then please do write them down on the little chat thing on the side, because then I can see them and I can answer those questions. But one of the questions I often get asked is, what should you drink? If you're drinking water, should you drink tap water? Is that okay? Should I drink bottled water? Should I drink filtered water? I mean, what is it? What do we need to do? And the long and the short of it is you've got to just start off by drinking water. And if you don't drink very much at all at the moment, just have a little bit extra. Have a couple of glasses extra a day, then another glass a day, then another glass, then another glass a day. So eventually you're drinking maybe 8, 9, or 10 glasses of water a day. That's a couple of litres, 2.5 litres perhaps. And what that's going to do is going to gradually start rehydrating your body. Don't worry to start off with the quality of the water. Just get water into your body. Now, ultimately, you do want to try and avoid drinking too much tap water. The reason for that is there's also lots of chemicals in tap water that's perfectly safe, but they're still not going to help you because you're putting toxins into your body. And the more toxins you have, as I've explained, the more of an issue your liver's going to have. The more of an issue your liver has, the harder it's going to find it to burn through fat. So try and then start going from regular tap water once you've established the habit, going from regular tap water to maybe filtered water or bottled water, because you are going to get more joy out of drinking bottled water, especially if you can go with glass bottles. Try and avoid the small plastic bottles of water, mainly because, again, the plastics, the chemicals, the plastic can leach into the water, and then you're drinking that. So it's a minefield, isn't it? and this is one of the reasons why I try and keep it quite simple to start off, because if you start trying to do absolutely everything and be absolutely perfect, then you can really get confused with it, and you can really start getting frustrated and thinking, well, what's the flipping point? because I can't do it all anyway. But the point I want to make is to do as much as you can, do little bits, make as many small changes as you can, because once you start making those changes, it becomes easier to make the next change. You make one change, you get a bit of momentum going, then you make another change, and get a bit more momentum going, and then you make another change, and on it goes. And that's when it starts becoming easier. So don't worry about trying to do everything and make all the changes in one go. Take it step by step, and you'll be amazed about how much better you feel. Always remember that this isn't just about losing weight. This isn't just doing something you feel like you should do. You want to do this because you're going to feel much better for doing it. Think about how good you feel now compared to how you felt when you were drinking, and you can almost do exactly the same again when you make these changes to your diet. Okay, let's take a look at some of these questions. Again, keep on firing them away as we come through. Lucy, I don't know if you can hear me. I'm going to go from the bottom if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, so when I say the bottom, I mean not the bottom of my screen, which is presumably the first ones that came came through. So,
yeah.
So first of all, Daniel asks, what kind of breakfast do I prepare? Now, the thing to remember here is I'm not like I'm not a normal person. On Tuesday this week, I'm going to do the first of 10 consecutive marathons. So what I eat is probably not what I'd recommend most people eat. But certainly, one of my go-to breakfast options that I had this morning, or two actually. I had, like a hobbit, I had second breakfast today as well. This is Sunday, right? So my first breakfast was I soak oats overnight in the fridge. I soak them in just plain water, sometimes almond milk, but I soak them in water, and I put chia seeds in there as well. If you've not tried chia seeds yet, then you definitely want to get on board with these. These are like magic beans. They're absolutely packed with goodness, and it's a really easy way of getting nutrients into your body first thing in the morning. So I soak them with the oats overnight, mix them all together in the morning, chop up an apple, chuck in some chopped nuts or some ground almonds, chuck in a few raisins, and then mix in some yogurt, maybe a little bit of cinnamon in there as well. It's like a Bircher muesli. It's absolutely delicious, and it's just that'll keep it going all morning. However, it didn't keep me going all morning today because I knew that I had my second breakfast, and this is a great recipe as well. If you take one ripe banana and mash it up in a bowl, and then you take one egg, mix that in with a banana, then you take a big scoop of nut butter, and you mix that in as well. Almond butter, great. Peanut butter if you can't get almond butter. And literally, that's all you need. Maybe a little bit of ground almonds, maybe some protein powder if you want to increase protein content, but otherwise just those three things: banana, egg, nut butter. Mix it all up into a batter, then get a frying pan nice and hot with some coconut oil in the middle, and literally just dollop on like a half a hand's amount, like that much there, and dollop it in the middle. Wait for a moment or two, a couple of minutes, then flip it over. They are the best protein pancakes, the best nut butter pancakes you're ever going to try. They're so tasty. My kids go crazy for them, and they're just packed with goodness. And that's a great breakfast as well. You can even have them cold. So try that if you're looking for breakfast options, Daniel, or anybody else. It is actually one of the hardest meals of the day to nail because we're so conditioned to having cereal and milk or toast or grabbing a muffin on the way to work. So getting breakfast right is really, really key. Okay, Rosanna asks, I'm eating lots of sweet things now. I'm not drinking alcohol, but not putting on any weight. Is this still doing me damage? Because you're not putting on weight, that is, it means you're not getting the outward signals and the outward motivation to do something, make some changes to your diet. I get the question. There was a great program on TV a little while ago. It was a documentary, one of those Michael Mosley ones, and he talked about, I think it was the one talking about sugar actually, and he's the guy who wrote the 5-2 diet, the intermittent fasting diet. And one of the things he did, this guy, he's slim, he doesn't really do much exercise, hasn't, as he had put it, an okay diet, but he went through one of those MRI scanners, those body, a DEXA scan, sorry, it measured whereabouts the fat was in his body. This was a slim guy, but he had a very high sugar, low fat diet, and what they discovered was that all the fat was accumulated around his organs. Just because he couldn't see that he'd put on weight, it was there, and it was the really, really dangerous stuff. That was this visceral fat. So Rosanna, I think you already know the answer to this. Is it still doing me damage? There's no way of telling unless you go and have one of these scans, but my advice to you would be to reduce the amount of sugar. At the very next level from that, you've got the problems of insulin sensitivity and the receptors in the the muscle cells becoming less sensitive to insulin, and so they don't want to take the sugars out of the blood. Then you start getting into type 2 diabetes and all those problems as well. So you definitely, sugar is really not a good thing to have in your diet. Okay, Sally asks, what about whole wheat foods, brown pasta, brown rice? How often is it okay to eat these in a week? Great question, and actually I caught your question at the corner of my eye, Sally, when I was going into wheat there. And the thing with whole wheat is you just have the husks, so you have a little bit more fiber, and there's a little bit more of the nutrition there, the nutrients, but not enough to combat the negative effects that you get from all the gluten that you're consuming when you eat anything with wheat in it. So whole wheat, in my opinion, having a sandwich made with whole wheat bread is a bit like benefits of having just a Big Mac instead of the Big Mac and fries. It's a little bit better, but you can do a lot better than that. If you want to eat grains, and you want to eat some kind of bread, then I would definitely recommend trying to get spelt bread or rye bread as a preference. Not that, well, try the German pumpernickel type rye bread. It's not my cup of tea, but the market in Tame where I live, there's a fantastic baker's there, and he's got some really good rye breads, and they're just like normal breads, but much, much lower in gluten. There is still gluten in them. I still have to moderate my intake, but it's definitely better. In terms of how many times a week, that's going to be up to you as to how closely you're getting to your goals. My advice to begin with would be to remove it completely, experiment, and then see about adding it back in gradually after that. Okay, next question. Okay, Emma, I was wondering if you're aware of the research of Colin Campbell at Cornell University, which is documented in his book, The China Study. I've come across the China Study, but I'm not particularly au fait with it. Basically, he's had some pretty strong research showing a healthy diet is a plant-based diet with no or minimal added fats. Okay. Also, his research says that saturated fat in meat may well be far less damaging to the body. That's definitely in line with what I said. Than the animal protein, which seems to promote cancer growth. I don't mean to get the diet wars, which are awful, but would be very interested in your take on this research. Okay, what I will say actually, Emma, not just another point. I don't want to kind of just completely shut the question there because it's a very valid one, and there's lots of studies. But it's like anything. Nutrition is a pseudoscience, and there's no absolute one-size-fits-all. There's no. This is the diet that everybody should be doing. You can study something, and you'll come up with an answer, and you can prove that you've had control groups, you've done it scientifically, and this is the way it should be. But then another group can come and study and get a completely different answer because that's what they were looking for. Or another group can get a completely different answer. So I think at the end of the day, it's important to remember that the best diet is the one that works for you. And that might be the 5-2 diet. It might be vegan. It might be paleo. It might be just eating clean. It might be just increasing the amount of vegetables that you eat. It might, whatever it is, there's going to be something that's perfect for you. So what I've given you tonight is a broad overview of what I recommend you eliminate and the foods that I recommend you add more of. Because in my experience, they seem to work best for most people, but that's not to say it works best for absolutely everybody. So. And you've got to be on board with it, and you've got to feel like there's no tension within yourself that you're doing the right thing and you're making the right choices. I think the research on sugar is pretty conclusive, though. I don't think you mentioned that there. Okay, Carol Watson, is it okay to eat a banana as a form of fruit as there's conflicting information on higher natural sugars? Carol, thank you for asking that question because I completely forgot to go back to the fructose debate when I was talking about sugar. And it is actually a very valid question because there's lots and lots of conflicting information out there about sugars and about and fruit in particular and what we should be eating. Here's the problem with fruit, and here's the problem with fructose. Fructose is the sugar that's contained within fruit, but the only place, part of the body that can process that is the liver. So if you're eating a lot of fruit, and I mean a lot of fruit and a lot of fructose, then the liver again can become overworked. And it starts to produce this fat around the organ, so you get this fatty liver disease, and that's where you start getting real issues. On top of that, fructose is still broken down into glucose molecules, so you still get this insulin spike and this blood sugar level crash. So you still get the same problems as you would do with normal sugar. But A lot of the research has been done on products that contain high fructose corn syrup, and a lot of the studies from America where that substance is added on a regular basis to foods. If you're drinking a lot of sodas, a lot of Coke, a lot of lemonades, if you're drinking and you're eating a lot of sugar, then if you're eating a lot of products that have high fructose corn syrup added to them, then you're probably going to have an issue there. However, if you're just eating a banana a day, or you're eating a couple of apples, or you're having a satsuma, you're having 4 or 5 portions of fruit a day, that probably isn't going to be enough to cause this to be a problem. So that's what I said. Don't be put off by the fruit thing. The only caveat I'd say with that is if you are having fruit, and you try not to have it in isolation. Try not to have it on its own. If you're having it, try and have it with maybe a handful of nuts, or have it at the end of a meal where there's other food that's going to help slow down the release of the sugars into your bloodstream, because that can often make a big difference as well. Thanks for asking that question, Carol. I completely forgot to cover that earlier. Millie, okay, is it okay to drink decaf coffee? I knew that question would come up. I gave up caffeinated tea and coffee in March. Well done. Yes, I had a 3-day bang headache. I feel loads better for doing so. Millie, I could have positioned these questions. Lucy, is this you asking these questions? These are perfect questions. No, Millie, that is fantastic, and I'm glad that you are off the coffee and the caffeine. It does make a difference when you do that. I just enjoy it too much, and it doesn't cause enough of a problem for me to make that complete switch myself. However, decaf coffee, you can get some really good decaf coffees, and actually, even just a couple of years ago, most caffeinating processes use pretty harsh chemicals, and obviously you're then taking on a lot of the residues of those chemicals when you're drinking decaf coffee. So you're often better off having the regular stuff. But nowadays you can get really good CO2 filtered or water filtered decaffeinated coffees, and you don't get any of those problems. Decaffeinated doesn't mean caffeine free. There's still about 0.2% caffeine remains, but that's probably not enough to give you much more than a bit of a lift as you get out of the chair from sitting down. However, do try and find the decaffeinated coffee or tea that uses these slightly better processes like the water filtered, and if it uses them, it will say that it uses them as well. So they normally use it as a bit of an advertising slogan, or check out their websites, and they'll be able to, the brand websites should be able to tell you as well. Another question from Millie: is it okay to eat natural sugars and fruit, so a few pieces of fruit a day? Yeah, I'll answer that one. Oh, I think I've got to the top of my questions there. Okay, folks, does anybody else have any questions? Lucia, do you have any questions?
No, but a few interesting things that you said there. I'm pleased to say, or I felt pleased, that I'm actually following a little bit of your advice already. But the one thing that you advised there, which I'm not doing and I'm definitely going to do, is stop drinking coffee. And I'm just a massive coffee addict. And when you said that, I just got filled with dread at the idea of letting go of my latte addiction. But I think I'm just going to try it for a week and see if it does make it.
Is that how you have it? You have latte normally, do you?
Yeah, latte, and there's a Costa coffee just around the corner from where I live, so it's just like really tempting to nip out and get one every morning. It's just like really bad. Well, so I'm going to try that. But some of the things that you mentioned that I do already, coconut oil, I always cook with coconut oil, yeah. And I really like coconuts. I have coconut milk as well instead of dairy milk. Brilliant. And I started, because I cut out sugar completely about a month ago, and I've lost about 7 pounds in a month just from not changing my diet at all, other than just cutting out sugar. Yeah, and one trick that I started doing to help me get through my sugar cravings was just having dried dates in the evenings when I got a sugar or chocolate craving, really. Just have 1 or 2 medjool, is that how you pronounce it? Medjool dates, yeah. And that's really helped me, and I've just completely got over my chocolate addiction now. I don't crave it anymore, and I've lost 7 pounds, so it definitely has a big effect on weight loss.
Brilliant. Just on that, Daniel's just asked a question there as well about coffee. He said, what's my take on bulletproof coffee? And some of you might have heard of the term bulletproof coffee, which is really just something created by a guy called Dave Asprey in his blog, thebulletproofexec.com. And it's a brilliant blog, by this guy's a real kind of adventurer, and it's worth a read. It's very, very funny, very interesting. A lot of the same nutritional philosophies as I do, which is fortunate. But bulletproof coffee is where you take a regular coffee and you mix in a teaspoon of coconut oil and a teaspoon of grass-fed butter, and you blitz it up with a hand blender or whatever, and then that's your bulletproof coffee. and,
and is that good? Can I have coffee like this?
Well, I'm not. I can't work out if it's good because you have it that way, or if you had them separately, it would be just as good. I suspect the latter. I suspect if you just have coconut oil and you just have grass-fed butter, which by the way is also really, really healthy, then you're probably going to get all the benefits. The thing with coffee is absolutely packed. Natural, proper, fresh ground coffee is packed with antioxidants. It's really, really good for you. But the problems come from this issues we get with cortisol. So it's a double-edged sword there. In fact, I remember seeing a study one time that apparently in America, coffee is the #1 source of antioxidants for Americans.
Oh, right. Healthy bunch.
You stop taking coffee, you're cutting out all those antioxidants. So, no, I was going to say something else there. I gave you a recipe for those pancakes earlier, and I'll send these through to you, Lucy, so you can get them up on the blog.
Yes, please.
Probably a good idea, actually, because there's another one which is a really good one for clean chocolate. Now, I wouldn't recommend you do this because you've obviously got over your chocolate addiction, so you don't want to rekindle that. But if you really want something chocolatey, then this is worth trying, and it uses coconut oil. Coconut oil is solid. In fact, I'll just get my tub. Hang on a second. This is the benefit of doing a webinar in your kitchen. Here's my tub of coconut oil, and it's solid. You see that it's solid at room temperature, but you warm that up to a little bit above room temperature, and it turns liquid. So what you do is you melt 100 grams of coconut oil, then you mix it with 100 grams of chopped nuts. Then you put in you can either just leave it like that, or you put in a tiny teaspoon of agave nectar, or you could use honey if you wanted to, but it kind of gives a bit of a funny flavor. And then you put in 25 grams of cocoa powder. So it's 100 grams of coconut oil, 100 grams of chopped nuts, a little bit of agave, and 25 grams of cocoa powder. You mix it all up in a little Tupperware container, one of those flat plastic ones, and mix it all up, put it in the freezer, just about, I don't know, maybe that thick. Put it in the freezer, 30 minutes later, turn it out, and you have a slab of chocolate. And it's completely healthy. Because all it's got in it is nuts, which are great, coconut oil, which is great, and cocoa powder, which is fantastic. It's really, really healthy, but you don't normally get the health benefits because it's normally loaded with sugar. There's no sugar in this. So you've just got the tiny little bit of agave, which gives it a bit of sweetness. But you keep that in the freezer so it's out of sight, out of mind. You get those those chocolate cravings. Go and have a couple of chunks of clean chocolate, and it honestly, everyone who likes chocolate who's tried this has said it's absolutely amazing. So give that a go as as well.
Great. Well, can I have the recipe?
I'll send them over.
There'll be lots of
great
people
thing is they're really, really simple.
Who'll read that.
I'll send them over.
Great. And just before we finish as well, I'd just remind everybody that this webinar can be watched again at any time on the web page, because George has given us loads and loads of information and facts there which are easy to forget. So just to, if you've forgotten some of the earlier stuff in the webinar, then you can revisit it at any point and watch again. I think that's all the questions we've got now, isn't it, George?
Yeah, I think we've covered more. So
yeah, we've covered it.
Participating.
Okay, well, thank you very much. That was really helpful, and I've learned loads there. So I hope everybody else has as well. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Lucy. Bye for now.
Cheers. Bye, George.